Sonics yesterday. It was 7-5 fashion, took the entirety of regulation in order to get it done. We'll have to see how it breaks down in this one. This is Pyjamas. And with the bans now, as we've already got Nomad removed for Empire.
Nomad making perfect sense for a Coastline map, just when you consider, once again, the kind of donut shape of the overall map, making it very, very easy to throw those airdrops down and be able to block out most of the kind of aggressive tendencies that would come out from defenders through wide rotates, especially those hallways that are going to be very, very useful for them if they're going to be unimpeded. Second ban, very similar in terms of the rationale behind it, as Lion fulfills an extremely similar role, so just get rid of both of those, and now it's going to be a lot easier for the defense to kind of roam around the map throughout the course of these rounds here. We might need to see some more creative operator picks to try and make up for that. As we get to our defender bans, though, the first one there is going to be Cade.
You're really hitting the nail on the head with the offensive side there, John. And with the Kaid ban coming in as well, just trying to prevent some of this utility that could possibly be holding up these important walls, like the new VIP wall, for instance. Valkyrie just going to be, well, what she always is. A lot of info, a very good gun, a nitro cell, way too many things that you want to give to the opposing team, so they're just going to remove it.
And so with that, we will get ourselves into the first round here. Not too surprising on the bans. We do get both of the anti-roamers knocked out, though, so a little bit aggressive on that front. That will leave some other options available to our attackers, of course, but we'll talk more about that when it becomes relevant over the course of the round. Let's get into it, though. So we're going to be starting out with a kitchen and service defense, as Empire will be on the defensive side here. Operator lineup, not going to be too surprising that they're going to be bringing to the table here. The Oryx obviously might stand out to a couple of people, but Oryx has become pretty standard as far as Coastline games are concerned, because of that hatch play and his ability to jump up through them to be able to get to the second floor and obviously remove the limitation of only being able to access the staircases.
Well, away from Doke and into more info here for Julio, so he'll pick up 0. Hopefully that will assist him a little bit, as yesterday was definitely not his best day. A .75 up against Sandbox, but it just seemed like Sandbox really had Nip's number, especially when it came to static. His entry stat was truly incredible, so we'll have to see what both of these teams can possibly muster in that category. Both of them actually lacking up against their opponent in that area. So either way, though, ladies and gentlemen, do want to remind you guys of this just before we get too deep into this series. This is not the only stream that's going on in the current moment. We also have Rainbow Six Bravo up and going on right now, being casted by the lovely Ace and Dez, so make sure you guys check in. Already heard them yelling before you and I got on broadcast, so there's definitely some things going on there that you're going to want to check out.
And if you don't have a second monitor, or you just don't have the attention span to watch 2 streams at once, keep in mind our command center will be coming back to you in between all these games on our main stream here to be able to break down all the action that's going on over on our Bravo stream, as well as here on the Alpha stream if you just want to stick around here. Anyway, let's talk about some of the opening action we've got going on in this first round, as NIP is working on their initial clear. Not going to see anything crazy for these first few seconds. A couple of hatches getting popped open, a few drones zooming around the map, but other than that, don't expect anything too crazy here for the first 30 seconds or so of the round, as NIP looks for a safe path to establish their first bit of map presence.
Well, in traditional fashion for Coastline, Empire is going to be holding most of the odds and ends, the entries to the building, making sure that Ninjas in Pyjamas can't get away with too much here inside of the opening minute. You see Scyther currently manning inside of VIP, as well as White Stairs being occupied by Empire as well. Ninjas in Pyjamas is going to take their time and just make sure to use this drone game, try and get them a little bit farther, especially inside of those frag areas. So as this first minute expires, Empire just waiting on their laurels here, as we'll see what Ninjas in Pyjamas want to do with this side of the map.
See once again here, NIP still taking their very cautious time with things. Finally going to start using that hard breach to be able to open up access into VIP and start crunching down on any bit of the extended second floor setup we'll get from Empire. Not going to see a whole lot of that, though, specifically because of the site choice we'll have, just having to try and defend into VIP a little bit. But overall, as you can see, just trying to more than anything deny access to the outside of that. That will once again give over the keys to that upstairs, especially the top-down angles that are now going to be opened up here by players like Pino on the sledge. And it'll continue to do that over by the circle couch and other areas near here as well, to continue to open up POVs against the possible anchors from Empire down below there, if they can get lucky and find one of them out here before they eventually have to assault the site at some point in the next 45 seconds or so.
Yeah, and this is what the entirety of this roam is intended to stop, is what Ninjas in Pyjamas is currently doing with Penthouse. You don't want to allow Pino to get too much control over that space, because it makes it very easy for a service plant that we could be seeing come in a little later on. Empire still have plenty of roamers around the map, and obviously some cross angles that could thwart a lot of Nip's plans, but you can see they're already starting to clear out the service area. They'll get rid of that Evil Eye on the desk as well. Some other things. We're able to clear that laser gate, but that'll more than likely be reset later on here, as we're already into the last minute.
You can already see the two players that were pushed out towards the lobby for Empire. Only one of them, I believe, fully getting droned out there, but they do back both of them away as we've come down to the final minute here. No longer is there any need to hold that extended presence as they can basically turtle in the site here and fend off the direct execute, which Nip is going to have to go for here. With that lobby control, they're going to get the capability to try and work themselves in through both the bathroom as well as the service door itself, in addition to keeping pressure from the kitchen window. And with that, they're able to leverage the first kill relatively scot-free, actually. As you see Scyther's health getting bled out there, and NIP claim it for themselves here. Always, however, able to respond to that from back upstairs as he finds Pino, and now Kamikaze next to falls. Always gets himself another one with Muzi rappelling back up to try and assist, leaving just Psycho as well as Julio in the fight here. Psycho picks up his first, Julio nearly getting a second exchange for this team, but with only 5 seconds left. It's looking rough, and Dan will clean up the final 2 to give Empire the opening round.
A great round from them overall. Love the patience, especially in the re-entry upstairs being the saving grace of this round, not allowing Ninjas in Pyjamas to apply too much pressure to their site players and allowing them to step up to the plate inside of the actual site to deal the damaging blow to Ninjas in Pyjamas. Especially with Empire coming up a kitchen hall is going to be a difficult round for Nip, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. Into round 2 now as Ninjas in Pyjamas will be attacking double bar this time around.
Let's take a peek and see how exactly the potential operator lap's going to change. No huge mix-ups here, mainly just Dan working himself off of the operator from the previous round as he's going to be back on the Wamai this time, adding that little bit of extra utility mitigation and forcing them to dump in a bit more than they might have had to do previously, and that'll basically be a horizontal exchange as they'll move the Aruni over to the Wamai, and once again keep the same general amounts of utility mitigation as they move into the second round.
Also going to be bringing Malusi along for the ride as well, just to slow the entry of Nip into the actual site. This is a site that desperately needs it as well, and just a reminder, Blue Bar not going to be occupied too heavily by Empire. They'll extend this out towards the eastern side and try and work the lobby space in order to make sure that no one can possibly plant here. And that's why this wall is going to be destroyed here on Coast. This is a rudimentary one we usually tend to see, so Nip will be ready for this, as more than likely their plan will be, well, what everybody else's plan is. Either plant on this couch that we're looking at right now or over in Sunrise next to the bomb chassis.
So once again, no surprises coming in terms of the setup. Should be a fairly straightforward affair for NIP to be able to clear this out as well, but obviously looks can be deceiving, and NIP will have a long checklist of things to be able to take out, such as that setup behind the bomb chassis, as well as any support that's going to come from behind the couch. That'll more than likely force them into going for top-down control, just like we saw in the previous round there. So we're going to be wanting to take away Hookah and a couple other key areas here horizontally. They're going to want to try and get access to some other places like the outside of the pool door there, be able to open that up as much as possible so that they have a direct path to the site once the timer gets low enough to be able to force them in, as we saw in the previous round. Weren't really able to accomplish it last time, and Empire was able to easily tear that attack apart with the majority of the setup they had still in the site in those dying seconds of the round. So now NIP need to find a way to speed this up or open up the clearance just a bit more so they can work their way into the site a bit more cleanly this time.
Now, Ninjas in Pyjamas able to get the opening pick in the last round, but really didn't mean too much to the overarching story of round 1. For round 2, it could be a little bit different, though, as Pino will be hopping into Penthouse Bathroom and quickly making his way into Guitar. Not too much of a read on these Empire members that are more extended off towards site, but it's definitely not the vertical play. It's into the horizontal here as they're trying to hold on to Kitchen as well as Office. You can see how extended Empire are on this bottom floor here. We have every single avenue locked up, trying to work the stairwells, everything of the sort. This is exactly what you want to see out of Empire.
It's important to note as well that Empire were able to utilize kind of a re-aggression from specifically this area, the Cool Vibes stairs, to really, unfortunately, hamper Nip's progress there as they backed away from their other aggressive positions, kind of a midpoint of the round there, but then realized because there was no pressure from NIP on anywhere like Sunrise and very minimal pressure for even places like the kitchen window, they had no problem heading back up Cool Vibes there and re-assaulting against NIP, so NIP will need to watch out for that. Shepard, in the meanwhile, as we go back to current events, is going to have to watch out for himself in a second. He's got Muzi and potentially one other player trying to lurk up against him here, so we'll have to rely on support from his teammates, and he might very well get that in the form of Dan, as he's going to pre-knock that window in the event he wants to try and go for a more aggressive play in a few seconds. And you can see the concentration of Empire players now over here towards Cool Vibes. Muzi is now the one that really has to be careful about himself, as the tables have truly flipped on this specific situation.
Like
Air's going to push him, and no! They don't realize he's there. He goes right in for the double, and that's a massive opener for NIP a second time.
Not supposed to break down that way. Empire will at least be able to fight back, and Dan will get one as well. We get the equalizer, but not before Julio can step up. He'll be able to take down Dan. It's a 3 versus 2 in favor of Ninjas in Pyjamas, and they still have plenty of time to get this done. Initially, I thought that Nip would run into a couple of problems. They were starting to get low on time. It didn't really look like they had an answer to a lot of this, but Empire just not aware of the player on Cool Vibes, and Muzi getting away with a lot there.
Julio patiently waiting for an aggressive rotate from someone on Empire from blue into the Sunrise bar, but not going to get it. It's going to be Scyther instead that strikes first here from outside in the hallway, and as well, he'll be able to move forward to take out Julio, leaving just Pino in this fight. With only 10 seconds left to clutch, it gets the first kill though, but Shepard's got the shotgun primed and ready to go at the bottom of the staircase. He'll quickly exchange that final kill out and secure a second for Empire, as they're well on the path to a lead here.
Already a much better series here from Shepard. Unfortunately enough for him, he is one of the affected players for Empire, and that thing, or that makes things a lot more difficult for him overall, given his role. He really likes to use the monitors around him, obviously, to get some extra intel. Every single player at LAN does, and with him off on his own island inside of his room, he doesn't have that anymore. It's very difficult to try and coordinate things as cleanly as you would before, but he stepped up here in a very big way for Empire, and it's definitely paying off some very serious dividends.
So Melusi going to stay in play here for Empire as they just quickly 6-pick that back in. I believe over from Amazi, if I caught that correctly, before we went back in. Unimportant details, a fairly minor switch, not going to cause any shakeups on the NIP roster either, as that too is going to remain very similar to what we've already had in previous rounds. The Zero, for instance, staying in play as they need that extra intel to be able to line up the assault for themselves, as well as the possible capability to knock out some utility. They've got a few other ways to accomplish that as well, most notably the Twitch drone that we can see sneaking in, especially inside of Hookah here, as Empire is going to have to play some angles that are a bit further back, so any utility that's placed a bit more forwards, closer to the door, for instance, is pretty much primed for the picking for Muzi's utility there, so we'll have to see what he's able to successfully knock out over the course of this round. Keep in mind, of course, he's also going to be focused a bit on fragging duties, as he will fulfill that, considering he has the F2 there, so might not fully be able to commit himself to that once we reach that minute 30-second marker later in the round.
Default plant knocked out inside of Billiards, utility stack here for Vase, also with the recent buff to that space in general because of what they did to the windows on this map, making it a little bit harder to reach here. So those mute jammers will actually be allowed to exist, whereas before you could simply just shoot them off of the roof and things were fairly straightforward from there for the offense. But now this time around, Ninjas in Pyjamas has a little bit more to do than they normally would. These mute jammers don't only hold up the walls, they'll also stop Julio from trying to get info if he does want to launch one of his cameras into one of those single panels. Looks like the dangerous version of Coastline will start here in round 3 as Dan will have our first spawn kill of the game, taking out Psycho.
First, opening kill for Empire inside of this series, and a good one at that here. Inside of only the first 45 seconds or so, to be taking out what's normally a pivotal player for NIP, but over the past few months hasn't necessarily remained the case. It's really been Muzi that's become the highlight for this team, and certainly showed that yesterday in their game versus Sandbox. We'll see what else the rest of the team's going to be able to do, but meanwhile, it's Dan just running around, picking up multiple kills, as now he's grabbed Muzi as well. Almost like I jinxed it there, as he's going to go down, and that leaves the fragging power for NIP at a serious lack now with the removal of both of those players.
Dan has always been an incredible player, and it seems that he's came even more into his own since we'd seen him previously. Just as a reminder, in Stage 3, Empire did end up finishing second behind BDS. So this team, definitely nothing to shake your head at when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to Dan's play. I mean, you heard the guy himself inside of his interview. He is just very well suited for situations where there's a lot of bodies trying to come in onto him. So looks like he'll be able to get away with a little bit too much here for Nip's liking, as they're still on the outside of the building. Julio trying to get some extra information up top inside of Hookah with these SAM cams, but none of this really going to bode too well for them. Joystick's going to add insult to injury, as well as Kamikaze simply cannot react to the Sunrise player.
That's 2 successful outside kills coming in over just the course of this round from Empire. NIP need to be cautious of this, as it's only going to unleash more of those attempts later on in the half, now that Empire has the confidence and knows that it works. Finally, an exchange will ring out here as NIP have 2 players on the Hookah window rappel, and Julio's able to use that position to finally pick up the first trade against Dan. A very important player as well here, as we already saw previously in the round. Dan picking up some massive kills for himself, 2 of them in fact here. Now, of course, he being down on the ground is going to make things just a tad easier for NIP. Still, unfortunately, a 2v4, though, so while it may be easier in the grand scheme of things, it is not an easy round at all here, as they're now going to have to try and force their way into Hookah. Still have, I believe, 1 additional Toxic Bay to be thrown out here as well. One nice kill found by Pino, but it is immediately exchanged out by Joystick. Julio does catch Scyther on the cross from Hookah, so we might not be done just yet. Time, however, is once again getting low, and it's now a 1v2 here for Julio to try and clutch it out, and unfortunately, he's up against the shotgun at relatively close range here, so as long as the read is there, and there you go, Shepard once again, 1 pump to end it, as Empire go for a 3rd in a row.
And we talked about it last round, we'll talk about it again. Shepard, he's just looking a lot different today, and comparison to what he was yesterday, especially here on this coastline. In my personal opinion, this has got to be one of Shepard's best maps. Whenever you look back to the history of Empire, this is one of those maps where he just pops off, and everybody always remembers the game of him going absolutely nuclear as Lion on offense as well. So great stuff here from Empire thus far, but for Ninjas in Pyjamas, they've got to pick up the pace. And guys, they've got some history on this map as well. Coastline's the most played map in LATAM inside of Stage 3, so there's really no excuse for what's happening right now in the moment, especially given the fact that Coastline is so offensive-sided.
It's also important to note here that when we look back at the map picks, this was a bit of a mind game played by Empire that they picked into this one. NIP more than likely saying, cool, we have no problem going to this map. We feel pretty prominent on this map, so we're going to go over to Cafe, which is another map that Empire favors a decent amount as well there. So considering that, this could leave NIP in a very, very delicate position if things do not turn around at some point here on Coastline for them. But we'll save our breath on that until we get deeper into this map as well. Empire's got a good start. We still have a whole other quarter of this match here before the teams switch sides, and that's an opportunity for NIP to come back and tie us up at 3-3 as well.
We have so much game left, but it just feels like Empire's gotten so much done inside of these 3 rounds thus far. Ninjas in Pyjamas really need to wake up in the moment, just really not able to find the frags in any convincing way like they would want to, especially inside of the early round here. And for them, they're used to the bans that we're seeing. They usually end up banning the line, which they did follow through with on this map. Obviously, the Nomad can lead to some things, but Empire hasn't been outside of the building, and also with NIP and the way that they've been taking map control, it's not like Nomad would necessarily assist them in any capacity in this. Yes, maybe they could have cut off some rotations inside of the top space earlier, but that's really about it. Past that, Empire's just been playing a really stellar game thus far on Coast.
Woozy continuing to patiently wait to see if that aggressive swing from Empire is going to show up once again. It's actually very well weighted from Empire. It seems like they're cooling off on it a little bit. Obviously, Dan went crazy with the run out back on round number 3 just in the last round here, but this time it's going to be a lot cooler, calmer, and collected here as they sit more at the threshold to the initial expected entry points from NIP and kind of wait to be able to pick up a kill there. Good variance coming in from Empire. It's going to constantly keep NIP guessing and force them to slow down and ultimately waste time that doesn't really need to be wasted here, which only plays further into the favor of Empire. Good stuff from them.
Absolutely the case, my friend. Ninjas in Pyjamas, the minute off the board now, still trying to progress forward. And just a quick conversation going back to this Nomad really quickly as I look deeper and deeper into these stats for NIP on this map. Empire actually with a pretty solid ban here across the board, just simply because of the win percentage that NIP actually have on the offensive side. This is their most winning op when they bring this character. So actually a very solid ban here from Empire that could be slowing up NIP in a certain way. Again, the rotations that we've seen from Empire really wouldn't mean all that much to the overall utility there, but still, it's one of those things where when you're used to having it and you have to move away and pick something else, it can definitely throw a wrench in the cogs and kind of throw you off your game. So either way, Empire with a pretty awesome pick when it comes to the offensive side. Either way, though, minute and 10 seconds left here as Ninjas in Pyjamas are looking to mortar strike the actual site. A little bit of damage dealt to Shepard, but that's about all she wrote. Ninjas in Pyjamas still needs to get something done on the actual map.
Yeah, over halfway through the round, less than a minute remaining here now, and we've really had a whole lot of nothing happen for NIP except for just now starting to see them move in for this lobby control. A great swing coming up from Joystick up the Cool Vibe stairs, and at 45 seconds, they'll claim the first kill against a very important player, Muzi. Psycho does trade that one back out, however, against Shepard. Oh, and he's going to be able to carry it forward further as well. A second picked up from him as he finds Dan leaning in by the kitchen window. He's ready for a third also as another player from Empire is ready to challenge over by that doorway. Scyther will now get dropped in a separate fight, and suddenly Empire looking a whole lot weaker here due to NIP taking a slow approach. But before Scyther can be finished off, we do see Always sneak off the kill. Kamikaze and Pino, though, clean up shop immediately after that. And finally, NIP find themselves a confident win to get on the board.
Yeah, so very awkward for Empire there inside of the dying moments. I mean, this is something that we've seen from Ninjas in Pyjamas pretty often, is when they hit an obstacle, they tend to just start walking at things. And that's exactly what we're going to see inside of this round. They are able to gather the actual lobby control, and you can see how Empire stacked over towards the jungle side of Kitchen. And this just allows Psycho to walk right in through stalls, not only pick up Shepard, who's looking on the complete opposite side of the rotation, but also kill the re-entry that's trying to come back in through Kitchen. And that's just so much damage already dealt to Empire. And you can see how they're also trying to fight back in a certain capacity, especially with a player inside of security, but that didn't matter either. Ninjas in Pyjamas are used to that being played, and they're assuming there's a body in there. They assume correctly, they get another frag, and then what do you do from that moment?
Now Empire gonna have to quickly look for the capability to rebound here. Relying a little bit on their earlier advances. We saw them cool it off a little bit and went again with good reason behind that, trying to add more variance to their early round play. And on top of the fact that if you look at their matches, as well as NIP's matches from yesterday, the entry stats were really nothing to be impressed by on either team. So Empire cannot necessarily rely on their early round aggression to get them the outright advantage to win, because NIP is on fairly even turf with them in that statistical category at this point of the tournament.
Yeah, I also think that it also comes down to recognizing what Nip want to do in the last minute when it comes down to a round like that. That's something that as Empire you have to be able to identify and know that they're going to go for something very similar to that, because they've been doing it for quite some time now. So we'll have to see what Empire can possibly do and if they're going to be ready for Nip to try and throw it at the site later on or try and creep in and get some frags in an unexpected place. Either way, Empire once again spread out across this map, and this is what we like to see. We want to continue to see this from Empire. Hold that space, force Ninjas and Pyjamas to take it from you, dwindle this timer, and just put them into a poor execute if you can. If you can deal some damage or take a body as well, then that's even greater to your overall success to the round.
So taking a look here at what's going on inside of our first opening seconds. Not a whole lot to write home about here, but we are actually going to see Muzi get a surprising amount of control over here towards VIP. Empire playing ignorance to that as they believe reinforce. No reinforcements as far as I can tell on either of the left side walls there either. So he's going to leave that right open for the taking, as the extended setup here will be left quite vulnerable. And as well, Empire won't even really be taking up position towards it. So they are going to let NIP potentially take that early on. They'll have to be careful of the re-advance that we've already seen a few times from Empire back up towards that. It doesn't seem like NIP are necessarily going to keep a whole lot of pressure here long term, however. Already shifting a few players away from that. Now the attention shifts over here towards the main stairs, where Julio has obviously just jumped in on the second floor window, and he does have, as you can see, always sitting a couple feet below him right now, possibly ready to take the fight in a few moments' time.
Well, Nip with top floor control. We can see that Empire was setting them, some things up top to make it difficult to play around this hookah hatch, but I don't necessarily think that they're actually going to be able to get the re-aggression up top. I think this is going to be a lot of Nip just taking control of this and allowing Pino to do some quite serious work. You can see Muzi's worried about vibes, and White Stairs has already been locked up as well by Nip, so really nothing Empire can do. Joystick can possibly win this out with the M590 if somebody does want to try and aggress onto vibes, but even if he tries to swing for the base player, Muzi should more than likely win that. Now going down into the last minute here as Ninjas and Pyjamas is trying to break things up and look for the Sunrise plant.
Minute remaining here, and as you said before, NIP with full control upstairs. Will be very hard to see the re-aggression, but despite that fact, still going to keep the pressure from Joystick sitting over on the cool vibe stairs, ready to take a challenge against any overzealous member of NIP that might try to leap down the stairs without first checking it. So Joystick actually finding that not a whole lot going on here. You could see building up the courage slowly to maybe even self-check it himself, as he could potentially swing up there, but the Gemini now starting to work itself in through the pool door, and that's usually the siren call for what is going to be the execute following very shortly after that, and we can already see Psycho as well as Kamikaze trying to get in position to justify that, just taking out a couple pieces of extra utility from up on top due to the good work coming in from Pino here. He will be out of nades, but on top of that, Empire will be out of positioning inside of the site to play into, as you can see. Now relying on just the ranged utility they have. Psycho finally going to get the first kill at 15 seconds left here against Scyther. Rest of the team ready to hold off against it. Here come the swings, though, as Scyther now gets himself a second against Dan as well, but time very low. We need that plant to come down on the ground. No sign of it as of yet, and time's just going to run out. Empire walks away with an easy one there, as they don't have to do a whole lot to hold it off.
It actually wasn't that. Shepard had the perfect timing on the smoke. He tossed it in and set it off as soon as that 10-second marker hit, which was just beautiful. Ninjas and Pyjamas tried to re-aggress, if you guys saw Kamikaze, dipping in and dipping out of mud, trying to see if he could possibly get the timing, but Shepard just played that so very well. That's exactly what you want to see out of your smoke player, and Empire up 4 rounds.
So Empire, once again, quickly retaking control by just playing the passive game, baiting out pretty much all the time. They're
what a round, honestly.
Yeah, never giving NIP an inch of vision on a single member of Empire, and never over-aggressing, never stepping too far out into a fight that could have potentially given Empire advantage, but also could have potentially lost Empire a player or two there and put them behind. They played to the defensive side of this game pretty much perfectly there, and NIP just didn't have enough aggression to counter it out.
Yeah, you could see Empire was also really worried about Nip possibly trying to go for an entry over towards the servers or lobby area as well. All of Empire minus our SAS ops are extended out towards that east side to make sure that that won't happen. That allows Shepard to do his job and do it in such convincing fashion. So now for NIP, 3-round deficit now on the offensive side here for Coast, as they can simply not get anything to go. They're able to obviously muster a singular round, but these last couple, especially that last one, I really don't like what we're seeing out of Ninjas and Pyjamas in the moment. Really no aggression, nothing trying to come on to the Empire players and actually take bodies. We're just not really seeing any action out of them.
So we'll go into the final round of the opening half here with Empire well under control here. Worst case, going to be a 4-2 if we see the counter now come in from NIP. But of course, Empire already going back to where we saw them control his site earlier. It's going to be back upstairs one final time in Hookah. We've got a more aggressive Always here, leaned out over by one of the windows, over by the front door, trying to see if he can maybe catch an unwilling member of NIP. Lurking up towards that, trying to take up additional positioning. Looking a bit unlikely. That was only Psycho in the area, and his focus seems to be a bit more concerned over towards the big window or possibly the service entrance. Still another player working with him for that as well. There is going to be some resistance towards service here too, as you can see Dan giving himself an extended position to play towards over here. Even a reinforcement to assist with it as well, and the magnets too being thrown out. So he'll be trying to maintain this position with some additional support, I think sitting a little bit further back towards the kitchen door and bottom cool vibes area.
It's very similar to what we've been seeing Empire play this map like the entire time. Dan going to be on a forward position once again here inside of service. The pre-fire to the wall almost catching him, and also Dan missing a body because of that. So perfectly timed there from Muzi to allow Psycho to go in. And although it doesn't seem like it's practice, it most definitely is, but so is that Always. He's been occupying this space the entire time, and so is Dan, as we just talked about previously. But Ninjas and Pyjamas, this is what we like to see. They'll double down on it, and they'll be able to refrag with Shepard and Joystick falling.
The refrags coming in here from NIP are amazing in how they're saving themselves at the outset of these rounds here, seeming like Empire is going to take massive advantage when suddenly NIP picks up the trades out of absolutely nowhere. That's the kind of confidence that was unfortunately missing in the previous round here, but it's good to see it returning for the 6th and final attacking round for them inside this half here. So going to see them start to deploy down the VIP hallway. Relatively scot-free, no resistance coming in at any point there from Empire. That'll allow them to chuck in some nades and start to open things up as well for themselves to give them better POV on the site as we get closer and closer to the end of the round here. Still a little under half of it to go though, so plenty of time for NIP to bait out and analyze things. Drone count, unfortunately, getting a little bit low, so Intel might be starting to lapse itself a bit, but as you can see, Kamikaze nearly getting himself into exchange with Dan. Dan's at low HP though. He makes a smart choice here and backs away into a safer position.
Dan's going to re-aggress over towards VIP, a much smarter choice here as luggage is quite scary at the moment with Julio occupying the Aqua balcony as well as Kamikaze inside of this space. You can see they're trying to set up for the default plan in the moment, but this is also going to read very well for Empire's side in the moment. Scyther Nitro Cell in his pocket as well. We could see the adjustment down low here from Dan. Does still have that impact, but it's really up to Empire. And actually what Nip can do now, since Julio's been taken out, there's that impact from Dan to clean it up, and they just have to go for the frags now. Not very much time. They'll be able to remove Scyther, but Dan fires back onto Kamikaze. It's a triple for him as he looks for the quad. Pino outside on the balcony, and now it's down to the 1 versus 1. You'll love to see it. Very minimal time here as Pino needs to pick up the case and plant this, and he's going to need to do it immediately as soon as he picks that up. Big problem now is there's a bulletproof on that wall. He's going to be able to read out a lot of what's going on. He'll destroy that and immediately go for the plant, as right when this hits 0-0, Dan will be able to hop too, but Pino will actually be able to get up as well because of the time. Look at how this is breaking down. Dan moving forward for the hookah rotation now. Pre-fires the wall, knows that he's moved off towards Aqua. Dan with very minimal HP though. This could go either way.
Plant timing for Pino was absolutely perfect there. It was far enough up to allow him to get it before it hit the null timer, and as well, it was close enough to the end where Dan thought he might have tried to bait it there. Pino, though, is going to be able to line up that final shot and shut it down due to the massive HP advantage he has in that skirmish there. Beautifully played by Pino as NIP sneak in a second round for themselves at the end of the half.
Pretty scary sight there for both sides. Definitely could have went either way, but Empire's more than likely pretty happy with how that half went. A 4-2 split coming into the offensive side now for them. Definitely in the driver's seat here. We'll see if they can keep their pacing up on this offensive half.
Indeed, that'll be the case. The 4-2 advantage, the world will be their oyster. And as well, with the good capability to kind of bait out the time here, we're going to have to see how well they'll be able to do that inside of their attacking side as well, and how NIP will now try to traverse it. Will they go hyper-aggressive, as we've often seen Latin American teams do on this map, or will they try to play this cool, calm, a little bit confusing as well to try and throw Empire off and get them some of those early picks that they can then leverage into an easy advantage in the late run. Either way, we'll be starting out for NIP on a kitchen hole, the same way that we saw our friends over on Empire starting out their half as well, so going to be rerunning these sites one more time.
Yes, indeed. And for NIP, The confusion more than likely going to be paramount here, especially with this operator lineup that they're bringing. Not only Kamikaze with the alibis like we saw from Empire, but also Muzi bringing Oryx and Psycho with this war. And there's a lot of different ways that they could throw some curveballs at Empire, especially if Empire wants to abuse things like the smokes that Scyther could possibly be carrying. But we'll have to see once we get to that moment here, is more than likely Nip just worried about what could possibly go down on site.
We have some similarities for Empire's composition in terms of what MIP was bringing to the table too, with the big switch up obviously being Dan bringing the Finka to the table now and adding those adrenal surges, that ranged revive, as well as a health boost that can come in and help out our attackers should things get a little bit dodgy. Other than that though, very similar flare coming in, the Sledge obviously getting exchanged out for a buck. We still have the Yana, the Hibana, and the Twitch in play here for Empire, which I believe was present on NIP's lineup also.
Quite a few teams starting to take out Finka instead of the ban phase as well here. I think we saw it 2 or 3 times yesterday, and that's just because of the buff that she's received. She's actually so strong for your team to have a hold of, especially with her LMG in hand, with those frag grenades and everything else. Dan's actually going to end up using the spear here, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The spear's still a great rifle. The only difference obviously being the massive difference in bullets that you carry per magazine, but you still have those adrenal surges, and it still works in the same way to not only pick your team up, but also keep them healthy.
Drone sneaking up on Pino. I don't know if it got close enough to actually physically see him just as of yet, but may have just barely been able to do so. Couldn't obviously see the drone from Pino's POV, so there's a chance he missed it, but either way, it's clear enough here for Empire to get the confidence needed to start to swing in and take that hookah control for themselves. That is going to be a point they want to play for contention. Pino, though, will contest that. As you can see, he takes up position just by the blue bar window here. And there's a couple members of Empire still sitting outside by the ruins and that hookah staircase, which they're going to have to try and traverse if they want the upstairs control. You can see, though, Psycho, he's seen it now. He's seen it now. The drone moves in, and thankfully for him, it's just going to be the Gemini, so it throws him off a little bit as the crouch was moving. It threw me off as well, as I was confused why the Gemini would be crouching in. But either way, Psycho going to be forced out of position as a result of that, and now play from behind the couch. And a great catch, as it's perfect positioning to fend off the actual push from Joystick now and get him the first kill in the round.
They had the initial info, but always didn't have the read on the adjustment to the couch, and that's what catches Joystick off guard as he's trying to work in for the bar space. But obviously, nobody home. Great stuff here from Nip as he'll be able to pick up the initial frag, and now Empire running into a lot of the same obstacles that Ninjas in Pyjamas did with clearing the map and actually trying to get control and looking for these picks. Seems like the defensive favored Coastline is what we'll be getting here today, as Empire stunted for growth right now. Dan trying to work in towards office, always sitting outside blue. Where exactly do they go? Well, the case currently sitting outside of the kitchen window. Lots of different cross angles to worry about, always now working inside of Sunrise. Quite a few Ninjas in Pyjamas members over towards his right-hand side, which is all the povs that you literally just saw. Pino will still be holding things on here inside of blue. He'll have the cross here as well, but they know that he's inside of this space.
Shepard able to walk in against Kamikaze, and that's after Always nearly loses his life. Pino with the amazing cutoff from blue that no one's paying attention to initially. Thankfully, it's a quick exchange from Scyther, though, as Empire win that fight with mass more than anything else there. Still going to be another member resisting them on the blue side. It's going to be inside of office currently, though. Julio not ready to immediately prevent this. He's going to wait the timeout here, wait for this to get too chaotic, and then swing in from the backside in hopes that he can just run right up and execute the rest of the setup. That may not necessarily happen, though. Dan tears his way through both of the remaining members of NIP, and the case goes down with no problem whatsoever. Julio's flank has been read into, as you guys probably noticed before as well. They kept someone over by the Cool Vibe stairs to watch out for that. So Julio has no clean way to pick up a kill here, even goes, and it's a good read here, as you can see, towards the outside window to see if maybe he could catch a member of Empire that had gone out the kitchen window. But no one made the step that far because they had no reason to. There's no pressure in the site anymore, and it's just going to be an easy closeout for that flank watch. Scyther, who was already placing himself in that position to get ready for that push.
Incredible round there from Empire, and very much needed. It was not looking to swell when it came to their Sunrise take initially. A lot of bodies being lost to the Sunrise player that eventually became the blue player, and then Julio obviously with a ill-informed flank. He thought that he had it on the timing. As you were saying, John, wait till it gets chaotic, and that's really what you want to do on those flanks. You don't want to just try and give your body up for no reason. You want Empire to be forced into that plant, and then you're just the cloak and dagger coming right from the rear, take them all out. So either way, now for Ninjas in Pyjamas, you have to be really worried, especially with the way that Empire was able to adjust on that offensive side. I really like that they had the case preemptively dropped outside the kitchen window. That was all premeditated. Fantastic stuff from them. We'll see if they can get it done again here, but it's really going to come down to the early picks and the translations of those that we're going to be able to see here. Obviously, Nip able to pick up the initial one, but past that, it really wasn't that big of an assist. They were able to, yes, get the next kill from Empire, Empire, but they weren't ready for the push onto site, just like Empire wasn't ready for Nip to push the site initially on Kitchen as well.
So once again, we'll continue to move through these rounds and move through these sites in a very similar way, as we'll see NIP take on the same exact rotation, so far anyway, that Empire went for inside of their own defensive half. Starting out with Kitchen and now moving over towards the double bars. They will take a very similar, very different operator lineup going to be coming in for them, though. Lots of mobility inside of this one here. We're going to have the Malusi, obviously again the Oryx also to get all over the map at a moment's notice. And then aside from that, things fall much more focused on the site, as we'll have both a Mira as well as the Smoke playing back into that.
A little late site setup here for Kamikaze, is nobody knocking any holes inside of blue, and Dan with a big pickup. I don't know if that was inside of the bathroom or what here. Doesn't look like it was inside of lobby. Did he catch him inside of stalls? No, I don't know exactly where this body ended up going down, but either way, that's Muzi off the board. There he is. He's on white stairs. It makes a lot more sense there. Pre-fire coming in from Dan over towards that space. Gonna end up claiming a life, and now Ninjas in Pyjamas on the back foot, but that doesn't mean they're gonna slow down. In fact, Pino, he's already outside. He's gonna take some damage for it, but luckily the dashes of Oryx will keep him alive.
Just barely, though, as he's still going to take a good chunk of damage on the way out there, getting spotted out a bit too early, unfortunately, over by the VIP repel here. Meanwhile, Joystick just working on deleting some utility real quickly, and actually I believe it sneaks some damage off on a Kamikaze as well, as he's trying to take out a player entirely. Have to be careful, though. He's recently lost his utility support, and I don't believe he has anything in terms of utility mitigation, because we don't have any operators that can account for that. So, unfortunately, we'll have to back away from that position, fearing the potential second nade to come in at any second. Good news for him, though, is the fact that Joystick, as you guys can see on the right side of your screen, obviously out of those, so it'd have to be Dan or another player to get in a position to do that.
Aggressive showing here from Kamikaze as well, as he was trying to work his way up into mud, and oh, the timing for Kamikaze. You have to feel for him in the moment, but luckily enough, Psycho will find one of his own. Might be too little too late, though. A lot of the round still remains, and plenty of time for Empire to work this top floor and really start to abuse Sunrise for everything it's worth. Dan continuing to work the mudroom space as well. Knows this one is more than likely inside of the bar area. Another nade in, and it's going to deal another chunk of damage to Pino. Now down to a single bullet's worth of HP.
Seemingly a war of attrition that Empire has full advantage over because of their early picks that they had found specifically for Dan, and now 3 picks total in this round as he gets himself another one, finally finishing off Pino, hiding out behind the Sunrise bar. Julio desperately looking for the angle, needed to trade on against this, but it's going to come from Psycho instead. One and done for him now, though. His quad kill is picked up for Dan against Psycho. He's going to potentially try and go for the ace also, just has to isolate out Julio on the inside of blue bar. They'll know where he is now because of the direction from that smoke toss, and it's not unfortunately even going to be able to interrupt the plant. Does a little bit of damage to some of our players here, and Julio, a nice catch as he does indeed absolutely grab Scyther after he jumps out the window, but at this point, the members of Empire have no reason to force the issue against Julio here. 30 seconds, just have to wait it out, and at that point, the round will go into their pocket regardless of the outcome of the 1v2 here. So they're going to play that very, very passively, just wait down this timer, even backing away as you saw there a few seconds ago from Julius. There was a player positioned upstairs a few seconds ago. He's lost the plot, he's lost any hope of finding any of these players, and keep in mind, once we reach past about that 7-second point, it's impossible to counter defuse in time. So we've reached it now. That's it. That's the round. And once again, NIP, just nothing to do. Gonna hand the ace over to Dan on a silver platter. Very well played.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what a round from him. I mean, every single avenue that Dan could have abused there, he did. Top floor, mudroom, blue window, everything that he possibly could have done to Ninjas in Pyjamas, he did. Fantastic stuff from him, and definitely one that Empire are going to be very, very happy with. And I mean, I hate to say it, guys, but Ninjas in Pyjamas are looking like a shell of themselves in the moment. This is not good for our SI champions.
And meanwhile, Empire are looking fantastic, at least inside of this matchup right now, specifically when it comes to their early game. We didn't really see come out for them yesterday versus the Sonics, and they struggled quite a bit in that department to this matchup. Find themselves some fighting shape, find some of that aggression that we had seen earlier on in this matchup, but NIP seem to be a shell of their former selves in that respect, playing very, very passively here, kind of waiting this out and allowing for Empire to make quite a few plays against them. It's going to be going back as well towards a kitchen hold. I will say that initially in the pause, it was looking like they were wanting to go for a penthouse hold, but it's since switched from that. So even some uneasiness from NIP in terms of where they want to take the site choice, it seems.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of those conversations that you just have to have during that timeout and see what necessarily you can do to mess with Empire inside of this round, because a lot of this Coastline has been Empire setting the pace and Nip trying to have an answer for that. Even in the round that Ninjas in and Pyjamas found success, Empire still accomplished so very much. So it's really difficult for the NIP camp right now as they're trying to get something to work on this Rubik's Cube of a map, it seems.
And unfortunately, they will potentially be in for a bit of a rough time on the second map as well. Just pulling up some stats here to look at. Well, yes, our second map for Cafe looks very good on paper in terms of an overall win ratio for NIP at 2-2 for most recent plays. Important to note as well that opponents have banned that map 19 times against them. But when you look a little bit deeper at the stats, it's a little bit vulnerable as they only have a 38% round win ratio, or percentage rather, on that map. So a bit of an uneasy pick, at least in my book, looking at the stats for NIP going into our second map. Could very well be looking at Empire on the warpath towards a quick 2-0 here if NIP don't give us something new on that second map.
Especially with the way that Empire have been managing their utility game as well. I mean, it's looked very, very successful thus far, and Cafe is a map that breeds good utility usage. So we should be seeing Empire finding some pretty serious success once we get there, but we'll have to cross that bridge later on. We still possibly have some very serious rounds to cover here in Coast, and with 1 minute off the board already, Team Empire looking to strike and win this in 7-2 fashion. Psycho will be playing over inside of Sunrise as of right now, so this is looking very similar to what NIP did previously on their kitchen defense.
Psycho continuing to maintain just a bit of a pixel angle to try and immediately fend off any pushes from Empire that would come in through the pool door. If there's anyone that could do it, it's him as well. We have seen some very impressive kind of instant snapshot headshots coming out from him over the course of this series. Julio is going to be the one to take on the challenge at the opener, and unfortunately he's up against the most lethal player from Empire here, Dan.
Oh no.
And always both getting kills. The nade goes in, and from the grave, Dan will be able to take out Muzi. He does get caught with his pants down throwing that nade, but hey, at least he trades out the very same player that took him down. And just like that, we're down to 1 and we're down to 0 as Empire wastes no time closing down this final round and shutting down this first map.
Yeah, shutting down is the perfect way to put that, John, because Ninjas and Pyjamas seemed like they weren't even in the server. They take the tack time out, discuss everything, and then still get waxed. I mean, that's just a very, very rough showing for Ninjas and Pyjamas.
I will say